So it's been a hard month. As many of you know, at the beginning of the month, my office manager lost her 18-year-old daughter in a tragic car accident, and then her mom just a few weeks after that. And, of course, a couple days ago, on Thursday, our beloved Harry Wade died. He was in a chair, still holding the TV remote, Janice told me, that he was using to change the channel. Seemingly at peace, maybe he died in his sleep. And it was on their 60th wedding anniversary that we had just blessed the Sunday before. Harry was a disciple. He was an apostle. Someone sent to those who were lost. To those, as the gospel tells us, who were harassed and helpless. He might not have done it in quite the way that Jesus describes today, because I know he had shoes. And I know he didn't have a walking staff, but I did see him drive a car now and again. And I'm sure he had a change of clothes and brought along pocket change. But he was like those early disciples in another way. He went out fearlessly into the world to change it. He dedicated himself to so many people. He cared for men leaving prison. He cared for the homeless. He cared for our own Charles Phelps and others he befriended. He will be sorely missed. He challenged us. He joked. But he always cared deeply, and I will miss him. It's been a hard month. This week, the Southern Baptist Convention voted to expel churches that had supported women pastors. And I say that not to pick on our Baptist brothers and sisters, but I bring this up because the very passage that we read today is often used to exclude women from ordained ministry. The argument goes something like this. Jesus was a man. Jesus sent 12 men to be shepherds of the sheep of Israel. So our shepherds, our pastors, our ministers should be chosen from among men. Now that is a simple sketch of an argument. There's also anxiety about gender and gender roles, about the encroachment of what some appear to be a lack of standards in the modern world, a lack of moral laws. And there's this desire to hold on to a tradition and a fear that if women pastors are allowed, then all sorts of other ideas will creep in and dilute the message of the gospel. But I have to ask, really? Is that what you hear in the passage that we read for today? Just stuff about men? I mean, we worry about whether the pastor is a male, but what about where they're not supposed to wear anything but sandals? What about the Cadillacs and the Mercedes that the pastor drives? What about the gold and the silver? What about mega churches? What about all the land the church holds? What about the rhetoric about self-defense and violence sometimes? And the demonization of others, because you know what? That stuff is explicitly prohibited in the gospel today, and I'm going to recite it for you. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belt. No bag for the journey. Don't take 2 tunics or sandals or a staff. And they're to be homeless, relying on the hospitality of others, and they are not to proclaim a gospel of fear, but a gospel of hope and a ministry of healing. As you go, Jesus says, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. That's the description of an apostle, one who is sent, the description of a disciple. And I didn't really hear in those words any mention of having to be a male. But I'll tell you what, It's not just the ordained ministers. We are all called to be disciples, because this is a description not just of the early disciples, but what the church should look like in the world. And I don't really think we live up to that. We are all called to be shepherds, to be ministers, to be apostles, and to be disciples. And you might say to me, well, I don't think I can perform those miracles that Jesus talks about. And I say to you, well, listen, he says cure, raise, cleanse, cast out. I know that even as a doctor, I cannot cure every disease, every illness. But I can try to live up to that call. And I can ask myself, when I go into a patient room every day, am I there with them? Am I striving to cure? Am I striving to bring healing? For I know it's not in my power all the time when an illness will go out of control or when it can be healed. I know it's in God's power. But I can look to this call and say to myself, am I living it? I know we can't literally raise the dead. I guess maybe the first disciples could. I don't know. There are a couple stories in Acts about it. But even if we don't have that power, we can live in a way that is not afraid of death or of dying. We can comfort those who mourn, even if we don't know the right thing to say. We can reach out and seek out those who have died in a more metaphorical sense, those in prison, those addicted. I know there are not many lepers to cleanse, even in my practice, but I do know that there are those who are isolated, those who have been villainized, demonized, left out. And I know that we can live in a way that shepherds these lost sheep back into a community. We can reach out to them. I'm sure that few of us, if any, have actually seen a demon cast out Hollywood style. But the demonic is more than just a scary-looking being from hell. It is a force of division and destruction, a force of war and violence. We can cast them out by being unafraid, by living in a way that is uniting, building, peacemaking, reconciling. That, I think, is what it means to be a shepherd, a pastor, a disciple, an apostle. And being a man, to quote Sojourner Truth, ain't got nothing to do with it. It's been a hard month. Life is hard. The world, the crowds, they're haggard and they're wounded. The true disciple is moved by the world. Harry was moved by the world, just as Jesus was moved in his guts. That word that we translate as compassion is actually, in the Greek, is much more visceral. It's like moved deeply. Moved to act. Harry was. The way that he knew how. He cast out demons, cured the sick. He raised the dead and cleansed the leper. And he did it while having a good sense of humor and not taking himself too seriously. And he happened to be a man, and a good one, and we'll miss him. But you don't have to be a man to admire him and to learn from him. Rest in peace, Harry. We love you. Amen.